Late 1943, a cold morning settles over a Luftwaffe test facility in Rechlin, Germany. The hangar lights buzz with a pale hum, flickering across the silver skin of a captured American fighter. Its lines are smooth, aerodynamic, too elegant to be dismissed. A red-tagged clipboard hangs from the prop, stamped North American Aviation, P-51 Mustang. Fuel fumes coil through the air. Tools clatter on concrete. Engineers in gray uniforms step around the aircraft with controlled caution, speaking in short technical phrases. A German test pilot, helmet tucked under his arm, circles the fighter once more. His fingers glide lightly over the wings, unusually thin for the power they promise. The laminar flow contour is unfamiliar, strange, efficient. A mechanic climbs a ladder and primes the starter. The engine coughs, sputters, then roars awake with a deep mechanical howl. The sound rolls through the hangar like a challenge, commanding attention. Conversations fall silent. Eyes lock on the spinning propeller. This American machine isn't just another enemy aircraft. It's something new, something dangerous. What the Germans are about to discover will change the air war over Europe. The story of the Mustang began not in the skies over Europe, but in conference rooms and design studios thousands of miles away. In April 1940, with Britain standing alone against Adolf Hitler, the Royal Air Force urgently sought new aircraft suppliers. They approached North American Aviation, NAEE, hoping to license build the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk for their defense. But NAEE executives saw an opportunity. Rather than produce an older design, they proposed a fighter from scratch, one that could exceed the P-40's speed, range, and climb performance. The British agreed, but imposed a rule. The first prototype must be delivered within 120 days. It was an impossible schedule for most companies. For North American Aviation, it became a race against both time and doubt. A small, driven engineering team under Edgar Schmude sketched and calculated through restless days. They crafted something different, an airframe built for efficiency. The wings adopted a laminar flow profile, a revolutionary aerodynamic surface designed to reduce drag at higher speeds. The radiator was moved beneath the fuselage, creating the now iconic scoop, an innovation that, instead of slowing the aircraft, actually produced a small amount of jet thrust at speed through the Meredith effect. By September 9, 1940, the prototype, NA-73X, stood ready. It flew just 6 weeks later. The British named it the Mustang. Initial production models, the Mustang MKI, were powered by the Allison V1710 engine, excellent at low altitudes but struggling above 15,000 feet. RAF pilots admired its handling and speed on reconnaissance and ground attack missions, but recognized its limitations against high-flying German fighters. Meanwhile, Britain's Rolls-Royce engineers proposed a daring solution. Replace the Allison with the Merlin, the same engine that powered Spitfires and Hurricanes against the Luftwaffe. The idea promised to unlock the Mustang's true potential and create a fighter capable of escorting bombers deep into Germany. North American Aviation embraced the experiment. At Packard in the United States, the Merlin was adapted for mass production. When fitted to the Mustang, the results were unmistakable. Higher speed at altitude, superior climb performance, extended operational range unmatched by any Allied fighter. The aircraft was reborn as the P-51 with the Pacific and European skies demanding more power. The U.S. Army Air Forces joined the program, ultimately making the Mustang a cornerstone of long-range escort strategy. By late 1942, Mustangs had begun transitioning from British hands into American units preparing for strategic air campaigns. Word of this transformation spread, and it did not go unnoticed by Germany's Aviation Command. Soon, The Luftwaffe would realize this new fighter could reach places they believed safe, deep behind the Reich's industrial shield. And that growing awareness set the stage for German engineers to seek answers, not through rumors or intelligence reports alone, but by capturing a Mustang of their own. For the Luftwaffe, the Mustang's emergence came at a dangerous moment. By late 1942, Germany was fighting on multiple fronts, from Stalingrad to North Africa, and Allied air power was becoming increasingly coordinated. Yet, in Berlin, many believed their own fighters. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf FW-190 still dominated the skies. That belief would soon be challenged. German technical intelligence units were constantly studying Allied advancements. They evaluated wreckage from downed aircraft, interrogated captured pilots, and reported on enemy tactics. The first rumors of a new Allied fighter with exceptional speed and surprising climb performance reached Luftwaffe command through RAF engagements over France and coastal Europe. At first, the Mustang seemed insignificant, just another low-altitude attacker supporting ground troops. But in 1943, reports shifted. Pilots flying Bf-109s began encountering Mustangs at altitudes previously unreachable for the Allison-powered variants. Something had changed in the American machine. German aircraft designers and command staff took notice. If the Allies had created a single-engine fighter capable of reaching bomber formations deep in German airspace, the defensive strategy of intercepting unescorted bombers might collapse. The intelligence community pushed for confirmation. They needed a Mustang intact, not scorched wreckage fallen from the sky. Opportunity arrived first in Italy. After the Allied invasion and rapid airfield operations, several Mustangs were forced down behind German lines in 1943 and early 1944. One such aircraft, largely intact, was recovered, repaired, and transferred to Erprobungsstelle Rechlin, Germany's premier test center. For German engineers, this was more than an evaluation. It was a race for survival. Behind reinforced hangar walls, specialists compared the Mustang to their finest fighters. The Bf-109, nimble but short-legged. The FW-190, powerful but drag-heavy at altitude. The Mustang introduced something rare, both speed and endurance. They studied the laminar flow wings, gliding hands along the surface to feel how every curve minimized resistance. They examined the ventral radiator scoop and realized the Meredith effect gave the fighter a hidden edge, engine cooling that contributed thrust rather than drag. Then there was the engine. The Packard-built Merlin, refined for high-altitude supercharging, enabled the Mustang to fight at the very altitudes where German interceptors struggled to climb fast enough. For the Luftwaffe, this painted a disturbing picture. A fighter that could travel farther, climb higher, and still meet their interceptors head-on. The more they learned, the more they understood. Their airspace was no longer guaranteed. The Americans had built an aircraft capable of escorting bombers to the heart of industrial Germany and back again. But engineering reports only conveyed part of the threat. To fully understand the Mustang's combat potential, German test pilots needed to fly it themselves. And once they did, they'd discover a secret advantage that charts and measurements alone couldn't capture. Angle 1, airframe. A new shape for aerial warfare. When German engineers stood beside the Mustang's wings, they confronted a design unlike anything in the Luftwaffe arsenal. The laminar flow wing, conceptually, discussed in German research circles, had found its most successful wartime application here, instead of a thicker forward camber like the Bf-109 or the mid-wing load of the FW-190. The Mustang's airfoil delayed airflow separation along the surface. Drag dropped dramatically. Fuel efficiency rose. High-speed maneuvering improved. Combined with a sleek fuselage and that signature belly scoop, the aircraft felt almost ahead of its time. Even the radiator housing served a dual purpose. cooling the Merlin engine while producing thrust at speed. A subtle aerodynamic advantage the Germans noted with unease, where their fighters had evolved through wartime necessity, reinforcing frames, adding heavier engines, sacrificing range. The Mustang seemed born from a cleaner sheet of paper. It was a machine built not only to fight, but to endure. The Luftwaffe measured its lift-to-drag ratio, inspected its strength, and documented construction techniques. Each discovery pointed toward an uncomfortable truth. The Mustang's airframe was optimized for exactly the kind of war Germany was now losing. A long-range battle of attrition fought above the Reich's industrial heartland. Angle 2, the power plant. Allied strength inside the Merlin. Greatest revelation waited under the cowl. The Packard-built Merlin, a licensed, mass-produced version of the Rolls-Royce design, transformed the Mustang's battlefield role. German engineers knew the Merlin's influence from Spitfire encounters. But in the Mustang, the engine found a partner that amplified its strengths. A high-efficiency supercharger system. Reliable performance above 25,000 feet. Smooth, sustained power delivery during long patrols. Suddenly, a U.S. fighter could strike deep into Europe alongside B-17s and B-24s, remaining with them rather than turning back over the North Sea. The Luftwaffe had feared this day. The Merlin-equipped Mustang could fight on equal terms with interceptors designed specifically for defensive battles, and yet still had fuel to continue. Hunting that engineers noted the ease of maintenance, the clean layout of internal systems, and the precision of American mass manufacturing, the very industrial strength Germany lacked under bombardment. The Mustang wasn't merely fast, it was reliable at scale. The combination of advanced aerodynamics and an engine perfected for altitude gave the Allies what the Luftwaffe could no longer challenge everywhere: air control. And as German pilots would soon experience firsthand, the Mustang's battlefield implications were far more threatening than any blueprint could show. Angle 3. German engineering. Perspective. Confronting the unexpected. When German test pilots took the Mustang into the skies over Rechlin, they were prepared to evaluate another Allied fighter, not to admire one. But flight tests quickly challenged Luftwaffe assumptions. The aircraft climbed with authority, held energy through turns, and did not bleed speed in high-G maneuvers the way the Bf-109 often did. Its cockpit visibility, especially rearward, was superior to both German fighters. Without the heavy framing that restricted situational awareness in their own designs, for the report writers, language became careful. Words like überraschend, surprising, and äußerst leistungsfähig, extremely capable, appeared in draft analyses. Some engineers openly questioned whether Germany had underestimated Allied technology, a quiet yet serious contradiction to propaganda asserting Luftwaffe superiority. The Rechlin teams measured its range with disbelief. A fighter that could escort bombers from England to Berlin and back meant interception tactics had to be rewritten. Running calculations, analysts saw that fuel-heavy Bf-109Gs lacked the endurance for extended engagements. The WWII, though powerful, suffered at the altitudes where the Mustang excelled. Here was a machine built not for the short, sharp battles Germany had shaped the war around, but for a prolonged fight Germany could not sustain, and that realization cut deeper than any enemy bullet. Angle 4. Tactical shock. The collapse of Luftwaffe airspace assumptions. The two eyes. Mustang represented more than advanced engineering. It introduced a new doctrine. Before its arrival, American bombers pushed into Germany on the assumption of acceptable losses. Escort fighters could only accompany them part-way before turning back for fuel, leaving B-17s and B-24s exposed just when they needed protection most. The Luftwaffe's defensive system relied on this moment of vulnerability. P-51 Mustang. The Mustang erased it, long range. Escort now meant bomber formations would arrive over industrial targets with fighters still protecting them. Fighters, capable of dueling interceptors, breaking attacks, and then pursuing German aircraft during withdrawal. The effect was immediate. German pilots hesitated to make head-on runs. Interception timing fell apart. Attrition spiked among Germany's most skilled aviators. Mustangs weren't chasing glory. They were hunting threats. They stayed close to the bombers, disciplined, patient, unyielding. Luftwaffe commanders realized the danger. Even if Germany matched individual aircraft capabilities, it couldn't match the scale of Allied industry or the strategic shift this new fighter enabled. The Mustang became a symbol of inevitability, the harbinger of a turning war, and when German test reports reached high command, one conclusion stood above the rest. If the Allies deploy this aircraft in numbers, the Reich's skies will no longer belong to Germany. The stage was now set for the critical moment, the battle that would prove those fears correct. In the autumn of 1943, reports reached Rechlin Luftwaffe Test Center of an unusual prize, a P-51 Mustang, forced down in Italy after combat with a 15th Air Force bomber formation. The aircraft, remarkably intact, was ferried under guarded transport to the testing hangars near Berlin. Engineers and pilots were briefed meticulously. Every panel, bolt, and instrument was documented for analysis. Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Lange, assigned to the Luftwaffe Technical Testing Bureau, was among the first to handle the machine. It was unlike anything in our inventory, he noted. The wing, so thin, yet strong. The fuselage, balanced and smooth. And the engine, its heartbeat was almost unnatural in its steadiness. Test flights began in November 1943. Pilots from the Erprobungsstelle Rechlin Squadron climbed the Mustang to 25,000 feet, where German aircraft often lost efficiency. The Mustang's Packard-built Merlin responded with minimal power loss. Its supercharger maintained manifold pressure with surprising consistency. Observers timed climbs, measured fuel consumption, and compared turn radius against Bf-109G and FW-190A models. On the ground, engineers dismantled the Merlin, studied its cooling and lubrication systems, and ran its components on engine benches. Dr. Heinrich Bruckner, aerodynamics specialist, focused on the laminar flow wing. Wind tunnel replicas revealed drag coefficients far lower than any Luftwaffe fighter. Airflow separation occurred far behind the leading edge, allowing both speed and endurance unmatched by German contemporaries. These inspections weren't mere curiosity. They were a strategic imperative. Germany's technical intelligence network, previously reliant on photographs and downed aircraft reports, now had direct access to the secrets of American long-range escort capability. Every observation was meticulously logged. Lift-to-weight ratios, maximum sustained G-loads, high-altitude stall characteristics, and even cockpit ergonomics. By December, the Rechlin team had completed multiple flights. The consensus was undeniable. A single Mustang could outperform Luftwaffe fighters above 20,000 feet in sustained engagement. But more troubling for German planners was not a single specification. It was the combination of traits: a robust airframe, superior aerodynamics, and a high-altitude power plant that permitted long-range escort missions previously impossible. Even among skeptics, there was a quiet acknowledgement. If these aircraft were deployed in numbers, Allied bomber losses over Germany could drop dramatically. The technical discovery was complete, but its operational implication, the shifting air war over Europe, was only just dawning. The stage was set for the final evaluation, the moment where German engineers realized that no single modification or tactic could easily neutralize the Mustang's advantage. Through January 1944, German test reports deepened in detail and urgency. With each flight, engineers confirmed that the Mustang's strengths were not theoretical or situational. They were structural, fundamental, designed into the machine from the start. One of the most significant findings centered on supercharger performance. The Merlin's two-stage, two-speed system allowed seamless transition through altitude bands. Where German fighters often lost power rapidly above 25,000 feet, the Packard Merlin maintained thrust and responsiveness. Instrumentation logs recorded exact values. Critical altitude higher than Bf-109G's top sustainable power level. Superior climb rate at operational escort altitudes. Less power drop-off. Under continuous combat load, the engine's reliability impressed even the most skeptical evaluators. Maintenance crews noted tight tolerances, clean component arrangement, and high-quality machining, all supported by a mass production capability. Germany could no longer rival under constant bombing. Then came the aerodynamic verdict. Wind tunnel and flight data confirmed that the laminar flow wing dramatically reduced drag at high speeds. When combined with the radiator duct's thrust contribution, the Mustang achieved both a longer range and higher cruising velocity than any single-engine fighter the Luftwaffe fielded. Charts comparing Bf-109G and FW-190A. Performance revealed an uncomfortable curve. At low altitude, parity. At medium altitude, slight American advantage. At high altitude, German disadvantage becoming catastrophic. But numbers alone didn't shake German command. The problem was what those numbers enabled: a fighter that could follow B-17 and B-24 formations all the way to Berlin, and then still fight. That changed everything. It eliminated the Luftwaffe's most reliable strategy: ambush during the bombers' unescorted withdrawal. With Mustang escorts now maintaining tight defensive cover around the formation, interception tactics crumbled. German fighter groups suffered heavy losses in skilled pilots, accelerating a decline already worsened by the Eastern Front and Allied air superiority in Italy. Rechlin's final analysis circulated among senior staff in February 1944. The writing was clear. If produced in significant quantity, this aircraft jeopardizes the continued effectiveness of our homeland defense. The message reached the highest air command, but by then, Allied factories were already producing Mustangs, faster than Germany could build replacements for its losses. The captured aircraft had revealed the truth. The Luftwaffe was no longer capable of dictating the terms of aerial combat. The Mustang had taken that power away, not with a single innovation, but with a perfect combination of them. Now, the consequences of this realization would unfold across the skies of Europe. By spring 1944, the consequences of German test findings were no longer theoretical. They were visible in the skies every day. With P-51B and soon P-51D Mustangs entering full-scale deployment from airfields across Britain and Italy, the strategic balance shifted rapidly toward the Allies. Bomber formations that once suffered catastrophic losses now pushed into the heart of German industry with growing confidence. Escort fighters no longer vanished at the Dutch coastline. They climbed and held formation all the way to targets like Regensburg, Schweinfurt, and Berlin, then fought their way back out. U.S. 8th Air Force reports documented dramatic improvements. B-17 and B-24 loss rates dropped sharply during Mustang-escorted missions. German interceptor attacks became disorganized and less frequent. Veteran Luftwaffe pilots, irreplaceable assets, fell in growing numbers. By Theon, Luftwaffe attempted countermeasures, deploying Bf-109Gs with larger drop tanks, shifting to head-on attack patterns for quicker strikes, introducing the high-altitude FW-190D and Me-410 heavy fighters. But none of these efforts addressed the central problem. Germany lacked the fuel, industrial output, and pilot training to counter a fighter designed precisely to exploit those weaknesses. The Mustang's range inflicted a strategic wound. German fighters were forced to fight over their own cities at every sortie, burning precious fuel just to intercept, while the Allies fought with logistical abundance behind them. As losses mounted, Luftwaffe units began breaking contact earlier than expected. Some pilots avoided combat entirely when confronted by Mustang formations. Hitler's directive to preserve fighter strength clashed with the reality that failing to engage meant allowing Allied bombers to strike unimpeded. The result was an accelerating collapse of air defense capability. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe, once feared as Europe's most advanced fighting force, could no longer contest the skies on equal terms. Factories burned, rail lines shattered, oil production plummeted. The battle that German engineers first glimpsed in a quiet Rechlin hangar had now become impossible to ignore. The aircraft they tested, and privately respected, was now erasing the very infrastructure Germany needed to survive. The war's outcome was not yet sealed, but the air war was. When the war finally stopped and the skies over Europe fell silent, the story of the P-51 Mustang did not end. Its engineering legacy, especially the fusion of the American airframe and British engine, became a blueprint for the jet-age transition that followed. Captured Mustangs, engineering drawings and evaluation reports were seized by Allied and Soviet technical teams during the whirlwind post-war intelligence effort known as Operation Lusty, U.S., and comparable Soviet programs in occupied Eastern Europe. German engineers who had combed over the Mustang during the war were now asked to share every detail they had recorded. Drag coefficients, fuel economy charts, laminar flow surface tolerances, Packard Merlin supercharger maps, anything that hinted at how the aircraft achieved dominance. The laminar flow wing, once doubted by some aerodynamicists, emerged as one of the most influential takeaways. While pure laminar flow was difficult to maintain in combat due to dirt, rivets, and cannon gas residue, the wing's fundamental aerodynamic efficiency made it clear that shaping airflow, not simply adding power, was the path to performance. Post-war U.S. jet fighters like the F-86 Sabre showed this lineage in their sleek, lift-efficient profile. Engineers also studied the Merlin's two-stage, two-speed supercharger as a case study in maximizing engine constancy across altitude. Jet engines were replacing pistons, but the philosophy carried over. Performance at altitude determines control of the sky. German engineers, who had admired the Packard Merlin's precision during wartime tests, later applied similar thinking while working for France, Britain, the Soviets, and the United States during the post-war talent scrambles. Some examples: Dr. Woldemar Voigt, Messerschmitt, would influence U.S. jet development. Kurt Tank, FW-190 designer, continued high-altitude fighter work in Argentina and India. British Rolls-Royce teams who helped refine Merlin supercharging contributed significantly to jet turbine thermodynamics. Meanwhile, the Mustang itself continued flying well into the jet era. It formed the backbone of many Western-aligned air forces, fought again in Korea, and served in reconnaissance and close air support roles until retiring from frontline duties in some regions as late as the 1980s. Each appearance reinforced its reputation. The Mustang wasn't just a wartime improvisation, it was an aircraft ahead of its time. Historically, however, the most profound legacy wasn't the airplane alone, but the collaboration that created it. An American frame, a British heart. Refined through battlefield-driven testing, including German scrutiny, proved that innovation often thrives at the crossroads of different minds and nations. The Luftwaffe's evaluation. Reports captured this most clearly, albeit reluctantly. The P-51 was the fighter Germany wished it had designed first. History often focuses on victories and defeats, who prevailed, who surrendered, who paid the highest cost. But beneath every headline of war lies a quieter truth. It is shaped just as deeply by the engineers who sketch on drafting tables and the test pilots who trust their lives to lines of rivets and curved metal. The P-51 Mustang was born not from certainty, but from 100 doubts. Could a rapidly designed fighter be transformed into something extraordinary? Could two nations' technologies, separated by an ocean yet united by desperation, be fused seamlessly into one machine? Even its enemies, as they measured, probed, and dismantled it, found themselves acknowledging something rare, a design that seemed to erase the boundary between ambition and reality. The German engineers who examined the Mustang confronted a humbling realization. Superiority in war is never permanent, and innovation does not respect borders. Every blueprint challenged their assumptions. Every test confirmed that dominance in the air now belonged to those who mastered both power and endurance, both velocity and reach. The Mustang proved that strategy was no longer just about the fight, but about getting to the fight and staying there. In the sky, the lessons remain etched. Altitude is survival, range is influence, and excellence is never achieved by standing still. As snow drifted across winter airfields in the final months of the war, one silhouette continued to rise against the pale horizon. A long-legged fighter, engine singing, guardianship stretching far beyond the front. A Mustang heading home.